when my brother, Tavis, held up two papers, one a letter from the leader of the Republican National Committee, one from the leader of the Democratic National Committee. These were words from persons who are a part of the liars, the deceivers, who have promised us. And what I said in my few minutes, you're not dealing with the real powers. That man can give you a promise that he can't fulfill because there are powers behind him that can undermine anything that he says. Go to the White House and get a promise from the president. He's not the power in America. He's a front man for power. So when you don't know who you're dealing with, you take the lies and deceit of these people into your heart. I am telling you, Black America, don't you believe the false promises of your former slave masters and their children. And that's why the Bible says we war not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and the rulers of the darkness of this world and spiritual wickedness that is in high places. And none of us are sitting down with those boys that pull those strings. So any promise made by anyone else, don't pay it any mind.
Hello brothers and sisters, welcome back to my channel. This is your presenter Eugene Stories, and I hope that you're doing fine wherever you are today. Now, the video that I'm about to address today is about Dr. Louis Farrakhan trying to address the problems that Barack Obama brought to black people. While in the face of black people, it happened like a black pride. It happened like this will be change for black people, but it never turned out the way it was supposed to be. Now, Minister Louis Farrakhan has critiqued former President Barack Obama, arguing that Obama's policies didn't specifically advance of the interest of the black community, and that he prioritized broader establishment-aligned goals. Farrakhan has spoken about how, despite the pride of black Americans felt in seeing the new first black president, Obama's administration didn't bring about significant targeted progress for black Americans or address the systemic issues impacting them, like economic inequality, police violence, or mass incarceration. Farrakhan contends that Obama's policy aligned more with the expectation of the corporate interests, the wealthy elites, and even conservative politics than with the black liberation or empowerment. So there is so much critique that Minister Louis Farrakhan opted to talk to black people, share and opened up the eyes of black people around the world, because we believe that when former President Obama himself got into the seat, black people thought that that will be the end of the black problems. It was just in the picture, whereas people who were behind him were the elites, people who made the life of black people so terrible, especially in the United States. Now, Minister Louis Farrakhan is trying to expose and bring the name of Minister Barack Obama himself to the light, trying to show how majority of the problems that black people are still grappling with, he might have played the cost in confusing black children, because some agendas that he supports doesn't align with what he thinks that people should go through. And these were so dominant, especially during the recent election. We could see him trying to talk about passing the agenda of giving people the equality, giving people their freedom, But this didn't sit much to some black people who also have understood how the dynamics of the politics play. People who really know what's right for black people didn't vote or didn't hear him out, because what he supported, the agendas that he supported, because he is being backed by the corporates, the elites, and all these people, so just to say. So Minister Louis Farrakhan tries to explain to black people that this is not their brother. This is not the person that they should take the way they're taking him. They should see him as a different person because of the harm rather than good. Because black people woke up in the morning, went and voted for him. Now I'm talking about like 12 years back, when people went to vote for him. Things never changed. Besides, he had the influence until today. former President Barack Obama has a lot of influence, especially in the United States. But people who know the truth are not aligning with what he's trying to push to people, because some of these agendas, some black people are against them, right? So, and also the majority of the people are against all these agendas. Trying to look at those times that he served during his tenure, it didn't do anything right to black people. Of course, that was just a black face put there. It was a number of cards which you played. Now you will be voting for you will going to vote for a black person who doesn't support your agenda, who has the agenda with the corporates, with the elites, with the wealthy, right? So as you're watching this video, I want you to introspect yourself and ask yourself, in my life as a citizen, as a black person in the United States, as a citizen of the United States, as a black person, what benefit did Obama give you while he was on the seat, right? I want you to think about that while we listen to this speech by Minister Louis Farrakhan, who is trying to address these issues to us that we are trying to look. So these are presented Jintok Stories, and I'll be at the back give you my commentary in regards to this. I'll most definitely hope that you are going to learn, see the truth, put the truth into light. And just a simple request, if you're watching this video for the first time, I'll most definitely ask you to subscribe to the channel, like, and let's go to 50k subs. I'll most definitely appreciate. If you want to buy me a coffee, I have my Cash App account on my bio. You can check it out. And you know, if you can buy me a coffee, I'll most definitely appreciate. I will take it as my early Christmas gift. Thank you so much. Let's jump right into the video. I'll be back.
You Democrats, you've been in that party a long time. Answer me, what did you get? You got a president. He's worried about his legacy because Trump said the minute he get in, he's going to reverse the Affordable Care Act, because that's your signature achievement. To show you how hateful the enemy is, he hates that you achieved what you did achieve. So he said, I'm going to tear it up when I get in. So he don't want his legacy destroyed. Mr. President, let the man do if he get in what he wants, because he's not destroying your legacy. If your legacy is bound up in an Affordable Care Act that only affects a few million people, and they're trying to make it really difficult for those of us who signed up, that's not your legacy. But I just want to tell you, Mr. President, you from Chicago, and so am I. I go out in the street with the people. I visited the worst neighborhoods. I talked to the gangs. And while I was out there talking to them, they said, you know, Farrakhan, the president ain't never come. Could you get him to come and look after us? There's your legacy, Mr. President. It's in the street with your suffering people, Mr. President. And if you can't go and see about them, then don't worry about your legacy. Because the white people that you've served so well, they'll preserve your legacy. The hell they will. But you didn't earn your legacy with us. We put you there. You fought for the rights of gay people. You fought for the rights of this people and that people. You fight for Israel. Your people are suffering and dying in the streets. That's where your legacy is. And you failed to do what should have been done. But it's never too late. You, like Jimmy Carter, can be a better president after you leave the restrictions of your White House.
and come on back to the hood and start organizing like you did. And with your influence all over the world, let's make a new and better people. And from us, if it's Allah's will, we can make a new and better America.
I'm going to ask you a question. Do you think God would give his only begotten son for this world?
Think about it.
Just think. Look at the world that you live in. How rotten it is. We voted for our brother, Barack. Beautiful human being with a sweet heart. And now he's an assassin. They've turned him into them. You didn't hear me. They turned him. They brought him to England. See? Oh, now he can stay in Buckingham Palace. Nobody stayed there. Just a few presidents. Why him? Why? See, we know this enemy. See, America can sit down tyrants, but who will sit her down? She puts her trust in her weapons of war. She threatens the nations of the earth and has my brother calling for the assassination of brother Muammar Gaddafi. What has he done? I can defend that man. You don't know that man. See, you're a victim of that media that's controlled by satanic forces. My poor brother. They're bombing. They said they were only going over there for humanitarian reasons. We're going to stop Gaddafi from killing his own people, and we believe that. You've been deceived. You talk about a man killing his own people when you lie to the American people saying that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. When you lie and then take innocent young men who come to serve their country and send them to die in Iraq, in Afghanistan, over lies, that's a murderer in the White House. Who will say it? I will, because I have a power behind me that is bringing America to judgment as we speak. Don't be afraid. I'm talking.
The outside world saw Black America as hope for them, because they knew that if we united, we could form a political base of power that could change not only domestic policy but influence foreign policy. So when I went around the world after the Million Man March, we were met with leaders that literally praised Black people in America for such a demonstration. People lined the streets and cheered us from the airports into the cities, and there was no head of state or government that did not receive us with honor. And now the doors to the world are open to us, but we must be prepared now to, when these doors open, to go in and take advantage of the fact that we are an international people, a global people. We are not a minority. We are the majority on the planet, and the whole world is looking to Black America because we grew up in the world leader. We understand them better than anyone outside of America. We get nearly $1 trillion out of this economy, and we are the best educated Black people on the earth. But what we need is a knowledge of self that will give us self-love, self-determination, and a desire to do for self. Then the whole world is not our playground, but it is our, I would say, our garden, where we can go and eat the fruit from all of the trees except the one that's in the midst of the garden, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Minister Farrakhan, let me ask you a question about leadership, and certainly your leadership over the last 15 years, especially in organizing the Million Man March and the Millions More Movement March, I think is an example of the quality of your leadership, as well as the vision of that, the best possible folks coming forward to provide that leadership to us.
I think the best of us is yet to come. The best of us is like the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught me once. He said, there's a force in the universe that in the darkness, a star is being born. And you can't see it, but then that force that's in the darkness will bring that star into view. What that is telling us is we are never bereft of leadership. When leaders fail us, or when good leaders die, that same force that is in the universe that makes new stars and brings them into a view will bring new leadership into view. And new leadership is required among black people because there is a sickness in our leadership. I don't want to put myself apart from them, except that I do that sets me apart. I will not place myself beyond our brothers and sisters in leadership, because none of us have done all that we should or all that we could. But having said that, there is a sickness, a disease in black leadership. Let me give you an example.
Yes, sir.
Mother Coretta Scott King, a woman that sacrificed much for us as the wife of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The children of Mrs. King, willingly or unwillingly, paid a tremendous price. Sometimes we are ungrateful to those who have suffered to make life better for each and every one of us. But when Mother King passed, Harry Belafonte, our esteemed brother, who did so much to help Dr. King, who did so much to back the family, was disinvited to share a word from that platform on behalf of Mother King, because he had made some disparaging remarks against President Bush. And now Bush was coming, Clinton was coming, Carter was coming, white folks were coming. So we could disrespect one of our own because of this sickness in us, that if they don't approve of us, we do not approve of one another. That leadership, that quality of leadership that will only keep their hand in our hand as long as we don't step out of line with white folk. That quality of leadership must be overthrown, and a quality of leadership must arise that will never disrespect and be ungrateful to the masses of black people and never compromise principle because the former slave masters and their children are in the house. Brother Akbar said there's a syndrome among black people. No matter what we say or what we do, we respond like this. I wonder what Massa gonna think about that. That's a Negro syndrome. So black leaders can't speak as forcefully as they could or they should, because I wonder what Massa gonna think about that. Oh Lord, have mercy. Massa giving us money. And Lord, if I say too much, Massa gonna stop giving me money. So I can't talk like I know I should talk. And that's why they, like Nicodemus, they can meet Jesus in the dark, in the back, and say, I'm with you, brother. But when it comes to leading our people, they can only take us so far. And that's why that young cadre of leadership, those stars that are being born in the darkness, they must rise now and come forth without the poison of loving others more than you love yourself, and wanting to please others before you please yourself.
Another part
right on this. We're going to take a break. But when we come back, Mr. Farrakhan, you just opened up something that we definitely want to discuss. We've also noticed a shift in some of the black evangelicals in terms of how they relate to you. And we'll talk about that when we come back. You're listening to Open Line, KISS FM. Welcome back. You're listening to Open Line, 98.7 KISS FM. This is the third answer, Brother Mtume, along with his main man, Brother Bob Pickett. Before we go to our next selection of questions, Minister, we got a great deal of calls. Immediately after the summit in, I think it was in Texas, with Houston, with Brother Tavis Smiley.
In fact, we had Tavis on.
Yeah,
right?
That's, as a matter of fact, it was that Sunday.
It was that Sunday. Right.
And there seemed to be a misunderstanding. I'm going to call it that.
That's pretty good, nicely.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to be nice. The minister said I ain't going to use my regular words. But we were both, Brother Pickett, actually Brother Slade was there too. I mean, actually taken aback by the type of statements that were being made, and actually you were misquoted. As I went back, as I hadn't seen the footage, and when I saw the footage, it was stated that you said burn the house down, when actually you said let the house burn down. But there seems to be a whole issue over the covenant, and as a matter of fact, Brother Belafonte was there, right, and I think it was Brother Cornel West. Now our phones went off the hook, right, brother?
Oh, it's crazy.
Could you please explain to our audience what this was about?
Yes. First, let me say how honored I am, first, to be in the studio with you all. It's one thing to be on the phone with you, but now to be in the studio, I'm happy to be here. And I just want to say to Ron Daniels, Alambe Braith, and Frederica Bay, and all of the believers, and Minister Kevin, and the ministers that are listening by radio, my great appreciation and thanks to all of you for whatever I am and whatever God has blessed me to do. I could never have done it without the help and support of so many whose names I could not remember all to call, but I want to say to all of you, there is no person in leadership that is anything without those who support that leadership. And oftentimes we focus on an individual when an individual is the servant of the mass. So now, I am in love with Harry Belafonte. He's not only a great artist, a great humanitarian, but he is one of the most brilliant minds that we have today. It is the same with Dr. Cornel West and Tavis. Tavis Smiley, as I remember him as a talk show host, I have always encouraged that brother to come up to leadership, because we are bereft of leadership, and I feel that Tavis has the qualifications to be a great helper of our people. Having said that, Tavis, Cornel, and others had a tremendous investment in the covenant. That is a wonderful book that spells out in detail the horrible condition of black people. And even though there are suggestions of solutions, the fact that the problems are so clear, it also delineates the impotence of us as a people. Having said that, I want the world to know that Farrakhan would never disrespect the work of so many that went into producing this marvelous book. But what I said that was misunderstood, and sometimes when you hear a man and you think emotionally that he's disrespecting your work, you don't really hear him. And I guess the shock of what I was saying caused that kind of disturbance mentally and emotionally, so I was not properly heard. Now, Harry Belafonte told me personally, and I read it in his writings, that 2 weeks before Dr. King was assassinated, they met to plan the move in Memphis. And everyone was joyous except Dr. King. He was in a melancholy state. And Harry Belafonte sat with him and said, "Martin, everyone seems so happy, but you seem melancholy. What's troubling you, Martin?" And he said that Dr. King said, "I fear that I am integrating my people into a burning house." And then Dr. King said he wanted his disciples to be firemen. And I said, no, don't be firemen. Let the house burn. Now, Dr. King did not see a literal fire, but he knew that the house was in fact on fire. The fact that he saw it and wanted his disciples to be firemen said that he didn't start the fire. And the fact that the house is the house of our former slave masters, they would be foolish to burn down their own house. So the question is, how did the fire start? Who started the fire? And what is the fire? So I went to scripture, and this is something because Dr. West is a theologian, and some on that panel were pastors, and most of those who studied the scripture, I want you to remember this. I went to the scripture and the words of Jesus Christ when he said, "I am the light of the world." And I said, the light of the world is our day sun. And if you remember when John was baptizing in the River Jordan, he said, "One is coming after me, whose shoes I am unworthy to unlace, and he's going to baptize you with fire and the Holy Ghost." So Jesus comes and Jesus wishes to be baptized by John, but John knows that this is the one who's coming after him. But he baptizes Jesus with water, but Jesus is a man coming to baptize with fire. Well, what is the fire? The fire is a blazing hot truth that will undermine a house built on falsehood, racism, sexism, materialism, and white supremacy. Dr. King didn't start the fire. God started the fire. And if God has started the fire, there's no man can put the fire out. And that's why Jimmy Baldwin wrote the book Fire Next Time, because this is the day of the judgment of this system of things. Now, is the house on fire? Yes. Every institution built on white supremacy is on fire. Religion is on fire. The church is on fire because Christianity, as it was preached and practiced, was based in white supremacy. But a black theology now has arisen, and a new church is arising. A new politics is arising. A new education is arising. A new social system is coming out of the old. And that's why I quoted from the scripture that Christ said, "Behold, I make all things new. There'll be a new heaven and a new earth, and the former things shall pass away." I didn't mean to upset you to think that I would burn down the house with our children in it, but the house is burning and our children are in it. And every time Cornell speaks, he's not a fireman. He's pouring gas on the fire when he speaks truth to power. Harry Belafonte is not a fireman. Every time he would call Bush the leading terrorist in the world, he's not putting out the fire. He's pouring gas on the fire. And every time Tavis Smiley will hold a forum to elaborate and elucidate on the problems of black people and motivate black people to get up and do something for themselves, then he's not a fireman. He's pouring gas on the fire. But as the fire burns and the ashes come from the burning of the fire, And we too are set on fire because, as the scripture says, we are born in sin and shaped in iniquity. So our spiritual house is also on fire. But from the ashes, he said, I'm going to make a new heaven, a new earth, and you will be a new creature in Christ. That is what Farrakhan was referencing. Now, the last point is, when you make a covenant is a solemn agreement between people who are declaring their integrity to live up to that which is in the covenant. Who is the covenant with? Are the leaders making a covenant with Black America that we will never sell them out for friendship and favor with our former slave masters? We have not made that kind of covenant with our people. Somebody needs to put leadership before Black America and lay down principles that either we say we will and then be measured by our word, or get out of the way and let the new leadership arise. Black people, I went to the book of Isaiah. You can't make a covenant with Black America when you're living a lie yourself. You have made an agreement with hell and a covenant with death. That's the lifestyle that you live in. You're killing yourself. You're killing your people. You're living a lie. So until you can come up out of that and break that covenant with death and with hell, then you can make a new covenant. But the covenant cannot be with Black America before you make a covenant with God. If my people, which are called by my name, will humble themselves and pray and seek my face, then will I hear from heaven, forgive their sins, and heal their land. That's the covenant, and God will never violate his word, as these false people have promised us. And lastly, when my brother Tavis held up two papers, one a letter from the leader of the Republican National Committee, one from the leader of the Democratic National Committee. These were words from persons who are a part of the liars, the deceivers, who have promised us. And what I said in my few minutes, you're not dealing with the real powers. That man can give you a promise that he can't fulfill because there are powers behind him that can undermine anything that he says. Go to the White House and get a promise from the president. He's not the power in America. He's a front man for power. So when you don't know who you're dealing with, you take the lies and deceit of these people into your heart. I am telling you, Black America, don't you believe the false promises of your former slave masters and their children. And that's why the Bible says we war not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and the rulers of the darkness of this world and spiritual wickedness that is in high places. And none of us are sitting down with those boys that pull those strings. So any promise made by anyone else, don't pay it any mind.
We're in the 11 o'clock hour. We want to remind all of you out there, you listen to Open Line on WRKS 98.7 KISS FM. Let's go to the phones, team. We got a lot of phone calls. And let me just remind people, if you would like to join in this discussion with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, give us a call at 1-800-288-KISS. That's 1-800-288-KISS. Fatim.
Okay, and we encourage everybody, if the line is busy, call back because the lines are filled this morning. Okay, let's go out to Princeton and speak with John. Good morning, John. You're on Open Line.
Good morning, gentlemen. Beautiful topic, and thank you, Minister Farrakhan, for coming aboard and giving us the opportunity to speak to you. Given the consideration, and I heard clearly what you were stating about the black leadership, and I agree with you 100% on that. Given the plight of the African Americans and where we look today and the country with all the devastation going on in the world, do we as a people have the right to vote those characters in Washington and impeach this president, kick them all out, and start all over again? Because what we have now does not work. And if we don't do that, this country truly will be destroyed.
Thank you,
All right, thanks, John.
President Bush is really taking the country down at a very fast pace. He's born to do this. He can't help himself. He's an empty vessel that was looking for the right idea that he could latch onto. And the neoconservatives who offered this idea of an imperialist America, a global America, they offered it to President Clinton. He turned it down. But President Bush was made for this, so he accepted the ideas of the neoconservatives, and he is now the chief exponent of an idea that is taking the country into ruin. You can vote him out and vote his administration out, but you still won't get the powers that controlled Clinton when he was in, controlled Carter when he was in, controlled Nixon and Reagan when they were in. No, my brother, there has to be a sweep. That's why Christ comes with a government on his shoulders. For unto us a child is born, a son is given, and a government will be upon his shoulders. And he shall be called Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God, the Prince of Peace, the Everlasting Father. And of the increase of his government of peace there shall be no end. All of these governments of the world have failed in their stewardship of human beings. So God is coming in this day to take over the rule himself and set up a government that will give the people freedom, justice, equality, and the kind of peace that will make human beings able to live together in brotherhood. So I thank you for your question, but you can vote if you want to and vote this out. But whatever you vote in, believe me, it's the same thing that you just voted out. Because when you sit in that seat, you don't see the electric shocks that come up under it to let the boy sitting in the seat know there's another power here that you better pay attention to. So all of your votes, whether it's for the mayor of the city, whether it's for the city council, whether it's for aldermen or whatnot, these are offices that good can come from, but there is so much evil under this good that if you don't continue to wash your representatives in the pool of Siloam, they too will become corrupt and compromise away the future of our people.
What's this power? What's this power? Excuse me, I mean, you've alluded to this.
This power is absolutely Satan. That's why in the book of Revelations, I get an awful lot of flack. I get people who call me anti-Semitic. I want to say to the Jewish people of New York City, I have never hated the Jewish people or hated people because of their faith tradition. Don't put me in that ugly bag. But look, if you believe in the scriptures of the Bible, do you want to throw away the book and call the book anti-Semitic? In the book of Revelations, go get it, pick it up now. In the book of Revelations, chapter 2, verse 9, it says, I know the blasphemy of those who say they are Jews and are not. But I will make them of the synagogue of Satan. Why is it blasphemy to say that you are a Jew and yet fail to live up to what is required of a Jew? A Jew is not a race. A Jew is not a nationality. A Jew is a state of being in a covenant relationship with God based on obedience to his laws, statutes, and commandments. So when I say that I am a Jew and then I promote the very thing that is against the laws, statutes, and commandments of God, I am not a Jew. I am a satanic force operating under a good name. Everybody that wears a cross is not a Christian. Everybody that says I'm a Christian is not Christ-like. And everybody that says they're a Muslim is not in submission to the will of God. So this hypocrisy hypocrisy that is in religion, that Satan has absolutely taken over the houses of God. So Satan is the boss of government today. Satan is the boss of religion today. Satan is the boss of education today. Satan is the ruler of art and culture today. And this is why the people are steadily going down, down, down into more debauchery, more filth, more ignorance, more rape and robbery and mayhem, because Lucifer has been set loose, but his time is up.
You know, the third answer often has a phrase that he uses, right wing, left wing on the bird is all the same.
Don't matter, it's on the same bird.
Let's go back to the phones, Batim.
All right, let's go. Let's stay out in New Jersey and let's speak with Ken. Good morning, Ken. You're on open line.
Yes, brothers. Thank you, Brother Minister, for being here today. And also, too, I have to disagree with you about the book, The Covenant, because the book, I read the book, and it still relies too much on the government, okay? I mean, at the end of every chapter, it states, you know, go to your local official, okay? And to me, it's still looking towards the government. And I called in the day after Tavis appeared on the show. That day, rather, when Tavis appeared. And it seemed to me Tavis' anger carried on to the next day about after you appeared. It seemed that, you know, they wasted 20 minutes of time to basically disallow what you had just said at the State of the Black Union. And also, we as a people, I think we have to unite with the African people around the world. Okay, I think we need a membership in the African Union. Okay, I think, you know, African Americans deserve a right, a voice to speak on an international level. We have to take that voice to the African Union and let it speak for us, and let other African leaders, okay, help us in our cause here. And also, too, the 8th Pan-African Congress is in Harare, Zimbabwe this year in October. Will you be attending? And do you suggest that we attend?
All right,
Thank you, brother. No, I'm in total agreement with you. See, that's the weakness of the book. The covenant spells out clearly our condition, but it also spells out our impotence, because we're relying on the same people that have deceived us all along. And that's why I say we have to make a covenant with God, because he never breaks his promise. If we rely on God and rely on the best within ourselves, then we can solve this problem. Now, dear brother, yes, I have been to the African Union. I was there when it was being formed, and I hope to, we've pressed them for observer status with the African Union, and I think we will be there with our brothers and sisters in Africa when they have their next meeting, hopefully sometime in July. I would advise you, yes, go to Harare. It's time to stand by President Mugabe. And it's a wonderful thing that the 8th Pan-African Congress will be held there, because he's under fire. Remember, Mugabe was the darling of the Commonwealth nations as long as he let white folk keep the land. But when they impressed upon him, look, President Mugabe, you and Joshua Nkomo, you fought to take the land back because the land belongs to the people. And just before he was to win and take over, they invited him to London, and they made a deal. And in that deal, they were going to buy back the land of the whites, and then they reneged on their promise. And then after 20 years or so, the soldiers came and said, look, man, this is not what we fought for. So he began to take the land away from the whites and reapportion it to the blacks, and that's when the Commonwealth got on him, and now he's the bad boy, and they're working to destroy that man. So all the support we can give to Brother Mugabe is what we should do. Thank you for your question.
Mr. Farrakhan, when we come back after this break, I want to follow up on that same question about our relationship to Africa and ask you about the Sudan and the Darfur issue. You're listening to Open Line. We're with Minister Louis Farrakhan. Stay tuned. Call up people. Let them know he's on the air. We'll be right back. What's your take on what's going on in Sudan and the atrocity that's occurring in Darfur, and the fact that the black community here and the black leadership seems not to be embracing that issue?
First, my brother, when we were called Negroes, we did not have an international presence. The Honorable Marcus Garvey tried to give us an international presence. And of course, he was very successful, but the government feared an international presence. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad single-handedly turned us from Negroes to accepting ourselves no matter what shade of color we were, due to the Willie Lynch syndrome and the going in and out of our women by our former slave masters and their children, that gave us all these different shades, and then they divided us by these shades. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad asked us to refer to ourselves as the black man, the original people of the earth. And when we saw ourselves as black people, then every person of color on the earth, we identified with them. So in the 60s, nothing could happen on the African continent that black people in America were not concerned with. Nothing could happen in the Caribbean or in Brazil or in Central America or in the islands of the Pacific, where black people were concerned, that we didn't feel them, because a nervous system was being created for black people, that we felt the pain of one another wherever we were on the earth. But after Malcolm was assassinated, and Martin was assassinated, and Elijah Muhammad was gone, notice the shift in language. We were no longer black. In New York City, there were several black shows. There was Black News. Was there Positively Black? There was the national program with Tony Brown called Black Journal.
Right.
After the death of these giants, now the wise people said, let's change the language so we can change their focus and give them a new understanding of who they are. So subtly, there was no more Black News, no more Positively Black. Black Journal became Tony's Journal. And all over America, wherever black was describing that program, Black Star in Baltimore, that left. And then the new language was the minority, the disadvantaged. Then came African American. And what was happening is a severing of the nervous system that black had made, tying us to the struggle of black people all over the world. So now there can be a Darfur. Who cares? That's not us. There can be a Rwanda and Burundi. Who cares? That's not us. So we don't feel suffering until there's a Katrina. Oh, that's us. But what's going on in Haiti, that's not us. What's going on in Brazil, in Costa Rica, in Colombia, in Nicaragua, in Guatemala, that is not us. So the language shift. Now let's go to Darfur. If you notice, on the mall, 95% of those who were present were Caucasian. I'm not going to denigrate their sensitivity to suffering, but the reason that blacks were not there is because the blacks who could make something happen were never invited. It's not that black people don't care about Darfur, but Darfur, on the scale of suffering in the world, pales, because now I heard there were 180,000 dead, from that to 400,000, okay? 2 million displaced. But in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, 3.5 million have died. No talk. In northern Uganda, with the Lord's Resistance Army and the walking at night for the children trying to run away so that they would not be kidnapped and made to fight against the government in Kampala. No talk. Why Sudan? For the last 15 years, Sudan has been on the agenda for regime change. Regime change because Sudan housed Palestinian resistance fighters. Sudan housed Osama bin Laden and put him out. But Sudan is an Islamist regime that is against the state of Israel. Now let's stop there for a moment. See, now they said, well, these are some Arabs in the Sudan enslaving Africans. So naturally, this is the language of Arabs enslaving Africans. This is so clever, and the media pushes that so that there would come a natural hatred of blacks for Arabs, so that Arabs look like the real culprits here. Well, you don't know this, but I and my international representative Akbar Muhammad, who's in the studio with me, who I want to speak on this in just a few moments, he and I were together on a peace mission. Listen to me carefully now. How many years ago was that, Brother Akbar? Over 10 years ago, wasn't it?
It was 1994.
1994, 12 years ago. Now, I went to Ghana and spoke with then President Jerry John Rawlings. And Rawlings said, if you want to help ease the crisis, get in touch with Kenneth Kaunda, the former president of Zambia. We got in touch with Kenneth Kaunda, and he said he would accompany us. And so we went to Kenya and met with President Arap Moi, who at that time was over that group of nations that were working for peace. What is it?
IGAD.
IGAD, E-G-A-D. So when we met with President Moi, he sent us to Uganda, where we met with President Museveni. But the most important meeting was a meeting with Brother John Garang, who for 20 years was fighting the government in Khartoum. Now, why was there a fight? Was it over slavery? Akbar, you were with me. At no time during our talk with John Garang, which was 4 hours in length, was there ever a mention of slavery.
Right, never mentioned.
But when I mentioned the word justice, then John Garang's wife broke down and cried and said that I was the only person who came that talked about justice. Now, what was the injustice? The Arabs have mixed their blood with the Africans that live in the north. They are Arabized and Islamic, and the same racist poison that has poisoned the bloodstream of Islam has made the Arab North feel superior to the Christian animist African South. The South is black, 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 so black till there's blue in their color. So when you have, like the enemy has done to us, when you're lighter, you think you're better than your black brother or sister. And in New Orleans, when I just left there, they told me about the brown bag, that if you walked in a place and you couldn't pass the brown bag test, meaning your color was darker than the bag that you carry your liquor in, you couldn't go in certain places. And in Washington, D.C., y'all know that there was an elitist attitude among light-skinned black people against dark-skinned black people. The same game that the enemy has played here and in Africa. Now he's dominating that scene now in Sudan. Now look at the Sudan. It's the largest landmass country, I think.
That's right.
On the African continent. If it were fully developed, it could feed all of Africa. In the south, there's an abundance of oil. And if you remember in Nigeria, in the eastern part of Nigeria, they wanted to break that part off years ago and call it Biafra. And it ignited a civil war. And the civil war was to unite that which gave them power, because there was a regime in Lagos that the government of America and Britain did not like. Now what you got in the West, Brother Akbar, tell the audience, because I sent Brother Akbar there.
Welcome back to the channel. I just hope that you're fine wherever you are today. I hope that this video finds you well, this video serves you right wherever you are. Now, Before jumping deep into Minister Louis Farrakhan's critique of former President Barack Obama and how other scholars align or diverge from perspectives, there are several key themes that I tried to place to give us a simple understanding of what Minister Louis Farrakhan was trying to say. The first one is Obama's policies choice, racial symbolism, alignment with the elite interest, and missed opportunities for black empowerment. Now, I'm going to be starting with Barack Obama's choice and their impact on the black communities. Now, Farrakhan has often spoken about Obama's choices on economic, social, and foreign policies as failing to support the black community. Despite the symbolism of a black president, Farrakhan argues Obama's policies on issues like the criminal justice system, poverty, and education did not result in tangible benefits for black Americans. For instance, the foreclosure crisis disproportionately affected black communities, black families who lost substantial wealth due to predatory lending and lack of specific federal intervention to prevent these losses. Now, critics argue that Obama's policies focused more on stabilizing big banks and Wall Street than protecting struggling black homeowners. This was part of a broader economic agenda that prioritized the bipartisan solutions over the transformative change, which did little to address the historic economic disparities facing black Americans, right? The focus majority was focusing on the wealthy group of people, not majority of black people who are really struggling with some things that they needed help, that President Obama by then could have really done this in his power. But seems like he was for the rich. He was trying to do this for the rich. He wasn't doing for generally black people, right? Now, the second thing that he also talks about while I'm doing this breakdown is like he talks about the use of racial symbolism over structural changes. Farrakhan has spoken about the illusion of Obama's presidency as a victory for, black American, describing it as a symbolic without a substance for real change, right? Obama's ascendance to the presidency was seen as a signal that America was moving past its racist past. However, Farrakhan, alongside other professors like Dr. Cornel West, if you have heard him before, and Eddie Cloud Jr., they believe this symbolism did not translate into systemic change. For instance, a professor like Cloud, argues that the deep-rooted issues of racial inequality and the value gap persisted with Obama often sidestepping race-specific issues to appeal to broader coalition, thus avoiding policies that will explicitly benefit black Americans. Critics say that by framing his policies in race-neutral terms, Obama distanced himself from particular struggles of black communities, which left issues like police brutality and mass incarceration largely unaddressed. Let that sink. The third thing that I'm also going to be addressing that he also talked about was alignment with the elite interest of a black liberation. Farrakhan has consistently argued that Obama's presidency aligned more with the interest of the political economic elite than with the needs of the black community. Many of Obama's policies were criticized for benefiting large corporations, wealthy donors, and political allies, which in turn preserved the existing power structures that often disadvantage black Americans. For example, in healthcare reform, Obama's administration created an Affordable Care Act, which was beneficial for millions, but ultimately did not address the underlying disparities in healthcare access and equality for black Americans. Farrakhan and other critics argue that Obama's approach to reform the cautious and incremental rather than bold and transformative, which they believed was necessary to disrupt entrenched systems of racial and economic inequality. Now, what did Dr. Cornel West saying alignment with the interest of black liberation? Dr. Cornel West has been particularly outspoken about the Obama's ties to visit the Wall Street, alleging that Obama's policies during the economic recovery primarily served wealth financiers and corporate interests rather than creating a robust social safety net for the poor and working class. Americans West contends that Obama's adherence to neoliberalism, a political approach that emphasizes free market capital, alignment, are alienated from the black Americans, especially those facing economic hardships. The fourth thing that I'm here to address is missed opportunities to address systemic racism. Farrakhan has argued that Obama had unique opportunity to address systemic but consistently avoided doing so. For example, during high-profile incidents of police violence against black Americans, such as the death of Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, and Eric Garner, Obama's responses often emphasized calm and order rather than addressing the underlying issue of systemic racism and police brutality. This approach, according to Farrakhan and other critics, reflected Obama's reluctance to change the status quo on race relation directly, leading to frustration among black activists who felt it was playing it safe to avoid alienating white voters. Somebody like scholar Ta-Nehisi Coates also highlighted how Obama's stance often leaned towards respectable politics, suggesting that the black community should change their behavior to improve their socio-economic conditions, rather than addressing the systemic barriers they face. Obama's speech, Coates argues, frequently sent a message of individual responsibility without adequately acknowledging how structural racism constrains opportunities for black Americans. Coates further notes that Obama's approach to race was often muted and indirect, which meant that his policies seldom addressed race-specific disadvantaged directly. He always tried to avoid that. The fifth one that I'm also going to be talking about is Obama, neoliberal leader, and the disillusionment of the black intellectuals. The term neoliberal is used by Farrakhan and other critics to describe Obama's alignment with policies that promote privatization, deregulation, and free market capitalism. This economic orientation, they argue, meant that Obama was unlikely to enact types of sweeping social reforms that might have significant benefit black communities. Instead, policies such as the ACA and financial reform legislation were designed to appeal to a broad coalition and did not specifically target racial or economic justice for the disadvantaged communities. In addition to that, Dr. Adolph Reed Jr. has also criticized Obama as an advocate for neoliberalism, who was more invested in maintaining the status quo than dismantling structures of oppression. Right. Reed has argued that Obama's focus on individual achievement and personal responsibility over collective struggle reinforced the narrative that success is solely about effort, ignoring how systemic inequality shapes outcomes. This critique aligns with Farrakhan, suggesting that while Obama was a symbol of racial progress, he was not an advocate for radical change. The sixth and the last thing that I'm going to be addressing is the legacy and lasting implications of Obama's presidency on lack of empowerment. Farrakhan critique goes beyond Obama's 2 terms, arguing that the legacy of Obama's presidency left black Americans with a sense of disillusionment. He suggests that Obama's reluctance to address race-specific issues left many black Americans feeling abandoned, as they had placed significant hope in his leadership. Farrakhan contends that this sense of betrayal contributed to a broader skepticism about the political system among the black Americans, who may now see the symbolic representation without substantive policy change offers limited benefits. The question of Obama's legacy is debated among scholars. Some argue that Obama's example as a role model inspired a new generation of black leaders, while others, include Farrakhan, view his legacy as a cautionary tale about the limitation of symbolic victories without structural change. Critics argue that Obama's focus on compromise and caution set to precedent for future black politicians to avoid addressing racial inequality directly, fearing backlash or accusations of partisanship. This is a presenter, Jintok Stories. Tell me what you think about this video. I hope that we all get to learn, get to see everything which is happening. Until then, let's meet on my next video. Peace, love, and harmony. Salute.